Hi everyone, it's Rabbi Dr. Jack Cohen with the Dating and Shalom Bayis series. It's an honor and pleasure to be here. Before I start tonight's wonderful presentation, anybody who needs my help from anywhere in the world in dating or Shalom Bayis, getting set up, getting matched, having an evaluation of your current dating relationship and need help with Shalom Bayis, would like a PDF that I've created on what to talk about on dating or any other help of any kind, please feel free to reach out to me from anywhere in the world on WhatsApp or call me or text me. Today I want to deal with an interesting subject, and that is, and I see this a lot when people consult with me as clients and as students, what happens if I want to date someone or I'm dating someone that's far more religious than me or far less religious than me? What do you do when you have significant differences in religious observance? And we know all too well that can lead to issues. So here's a letter that I just came across. I have met a man who is religiously observant. I grew up Reform, and now I'm trying to learn more about being observant Orthodox. This man and I have amazing chemistry. He appreciates that I'm taking classes in Judaism to learn more, and I'm willing to advance slowly in terms of my Jewish observance. I told him that I don't intend to become Orthodox, which is usually a big red flag, but we'll move at my own comfortable pace and see where that leads. In a short time, we've become very close and share a tremendous mutual admiration. I'm worried that I'm not going to end up in the same place as he is in terms of religion. I don't want to be bound by any feelings that I may have for him, yet the common denominator is that we are both Jews. Am I potentially in over my head, or can this relationship have a chance of success? Great question. Can she make it with him, or can she not make it with him? Let's find out. So here's an answer that was prepared, and I think it's a beautiful response, and that is, marriage is quite a challenging enterprise, even if both of you are on the same page religiously. How many things that can possibly make a marriage go haywire? We know all too well, too many. So raising children, for example, would be very complicated and a source of strain on the relationship. How can one parent ask the kids not to watch TV on Shabbos or Shabbat while the other parent is watching TV? This is tremendously a problem, huge problem. Can just hear one person saying, leave them alone, dear. What if they enjoy themselves on Shabbat? So right away you have a serious crisis on your hands. If two parents don't share the same hashkafa or the outlook in terms of religious values, especially on Shabbat, what would you do if one parent watches TV and one doesn't? It can cause tremendous havoc in the marriage. Children raised in homes where their parents don't share the same beliefs are going to be confused no matter how careful you are in raising them. And I think it's only going to lead to resentment on both sides. The starting point for every couple should be comparable values and goals. That's so true. When I sit with people or I consult with people on the phone or on video, I ask them, do you have compatible values? Do you have compatible goals? Without that, you're going to have problems. That's what brings two people together. That doesn't mean that the two of you have to see eye and eye in everything, because we know that many couples, all couples have at least 10 points of disagreement, but the qualities in life that you feel are important and your aspirations for the future need to be compatible. Having said all that, if you decide to go forward and date each other, then in our estimation there are a few conditions you have to look out if you'd like to have success. First, there needs to be an underlying agreement on the priority of the continued spiritual growth. That means both of you had to hunker down and determine and dedicate both of each of yourselves to growing spiritually. You need to have an agreement that neither of you will hold the other person back from pursuing spiritual goals and levels. That one person can't hold the other person back. That's because at the end of the day, squelching your spiritual yearnings is impossible. And I'll tell you with a story that happened recently, and it'll inevitably lead to bitter resentment. In other words, there has to be an agreement that the family unit will focus on the goal of getting closer to Hashem. Recently, I gave a major presentation to a young professional group. It was on Zoom. One of the young women contacted me and said, I need to speak with you. And she said, can I have the person that I'm dating, that I've been dating for 5 months, can he also be on the Zoom? So we decided to have a consultation. And I said to her, how can I help? And I'll change the name. And her name is Gertrude. So I said, Gertrude, what's going on? She says, you know what? I was raised modern Orthodox. I'm very comfortable where I am, and I'd like to wear pants, and I don't plan on covering my head. At that point, I turned my attention and the conversation to a man that she was dating. His name was, let's call him Hugo. I said, Hugo, I have a question for you. Would you like your wife to cover her hair? And he said, I haven't really thought about it. It's not important to me. What about tznius? What about codes of modesty? How would you like your wife to dress? He said, it's very important to me that my wife should only wear skirts. At that point, she piped in and she said, Gertrude says, really, in 5 months of dating you, I never knew that was important to you, because that's not where I'm holding. At that point, I interjected. I said, ladies and gentlemen, if there's spiritual divergence, we're going to have issues here, because I can see from speaking to Hugo, as I had spoken to him, that he's growing spiritually. He was himself a Baal Tshuva who was climbing higher and higher. And I know deep down, I said, Hugo, I know deep down that you'd like your wife to also cover her. And he said, yes. And he sheepishly answered that remark, to the point now she had to start doing some soul searching. Not a week went by before she sent me a text and said to me that the relationship was over. Because as we see, when you have incomparable goals, when you have values that are disparate religiously, you're going to have issues. So it's important that you have to be on the same page with each other religiously. Let's go back to our presentation. Again, if that factor is present, which that you're both working towards spiritual growth, then there can be convergence between you and your spouse. But if that's lacking, then it's going to be divergence as you both seek two different worlds and two different life paths. This could even be in a so-called weaker partner that has a stronger identification with that goal. People are not static, and we can only judge by the direction that they're pointed in. So you have to ask yourself, perhaps they may not be as religious as you, but are they moving in the same direction as you? That's what we're looking for. Secondly, there has to be an agreement on modus operandi, meaning how will you as a couple resolve areas of conflict that affect the two of you together? You want to have an independent level of kashrus for yourself, but what about your spouse? Let's say, for example, you keep kosher and your spouse does not keep kosher, and let's say I'm a man and your wife doesn't keep kosher and she decides to go to McDonald's and she wasn't in the mood to finish her hamburger and she sticks it in the refrigerator. And now you have crisis on your hands, or she wants to heat up that McDonald's hamburger in the microwave. So we have serious problems because if we don't have commonality when it comes to spiritual goals, we're going to have crises by the bucket load. So it's very important. How will we resolve differences regarding the laws of family purity, which affects the two of you together? Are you both willing to abstain from physical relations for 2 weeks a month without resentment? Remember, for people who are Orthodox in Judaism, there's a period of 12 days in which you abstain from physical relations and touch. Well, if one of them is not holding by that and he doesn't believe in that, we have a crisis, because if God forbid there would be a case where they would cohabit together and be together and a child was born of that union, that's serious consequences. Not to mention the fact that having relations with a nidah, with a menstruant, is chayab, can lead you to what's called karet, which is, God forbid, that you can die early or your children can die early. So these are significant problems that can arise if both of you are not on the same page religiously. And of course, the most vexing question of all, how will you raise kids? How will you raise your children? All educators agree that effective parenting requires that the two parents present a united front before the children. There has to be an agreement of principles as to what the family structure will look like. How will you resolve it if one parent permits something and the other one forbids it? So we're going to have crises in terms of how the children are raised. They're going to see very disparate views of life and they're going to be utterly confused. We've given you something to think about. It's great that you've met a nice Jewish man. We answered the woman, and yes, if he has most of the personal qualities that are important to you, and he has a strong religious commitment, and he views Judaism as an ongoing process, and has a desire to grow in Torah over the course of time, there's potential for things to work out. But as you said in your letter, it's important to be realistic and not be seduced by emotional feelings. Too often, because we're attracted physically, we think that that's it, we're ready to rock and roll and make this thing happen. But if you have divergence in views spiritually, you may have a crisis on your hands. I even have a person that I'm helping with, I helped her with her husband as well. She's a Baal Tshuva, she lives out west, and she loves Torah and she's growing to the point where she walks almost 2 miles every Shabbos to get to shul. And she leaves the house at 8 o'clock. Her husband is not with the program, so he's not interested. He gets into his car 10 to 11 every Shabbos, so Saturday morning, and he makes sure to arrive 10 minutes later at the Kiddush where he can enjoy the food. To the point where now this divergence has created such a crisis that they recently separated. And they're now thinking about their lives and their goals and where they're headed. So it's critically important, as I see every day in India, that if both the men and women are not in the same playing field and they're not convergent when it comes to spiritual values, you can have serious crisis on your hands. And if you'd like my help in any way to evaluate any dating relationship or help you in any way in terms of getting matched or help you put together a top 10 list or help you in Shalom Bayis, you can reach me anytime. Have a wonderful day.